Welcome to another episode of Out Loud
and Laughing.
Get ready.
I'm Bryan.
And Jon, two gay cousins having big talks and even bigger laughs. Join us. Let's see what they're up to. It's Out Loud and Laughing.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Out Loud and Laughing. I am still Bryan.
And I am still Jon. I'm still Jon. Yeah.
That would be a really good drag name. I'm still Bryan.
I'm still Jon. That's cute. I'm still Bryan. And to the stage, I'm still Bryan.
Leave the stage, but I'm still Bryan.
It's like a beer, but instead of I'm still light, it's I'm still Bryan.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Drink it so much.
Although I don't know if we talked about our drag names. I already have a drag name I would definitely go with. You definitely have more than I do because I feel like you're just more creative. But if I ever become a drag queen, which again, time will tell. Mona Lots.
Yes, you do, honey. I think mine would be Sarah Problem.
Welcome to the stage, Sarah Problem and Mona Lots.
Excuse me, Sarah Problem. No, we're good, thanks.
We're just Mona Lot.
We're just Mona Lot. Or my first pet name and the first road that I lived on, Sunset Strip. My nickname, by that sort of recipe, if you will, is Cutie Sunset,
which is so cute for like a 90s drag queen.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can make it work.
Mine was more sensual. So my first pet in the street I was raised on was Sassy Camellia.
It's so good,
right?
Right, you sassy.
This game doesn't work for people that are like, I am sassy 8th court.
Yeah. My name is Phil on 7th. That doesn't really work that well. What's new with you? What's going on in your world? What's going on in your life? Tell me everything.
Oh my goodness, what is going on in my life? Not a ton, just busy, like the same old. Yeah, I think I'm getting stuck in the daily grind of it all,
Yeah, I can feel that. I started recently trying to give myself a routine, and I'm finding that to be just a little bit too much for me right now.
Yeah.
With everything on my plate. So I need to tweak it a bit. But I've been spending the last 48 hours, I've been home and sort of collecting myself because I was traveling last week. And I am spending a lot of time here organizing, Bryan. I have done under the sinks. I've gotten all these new bins. Amazon has been to my door more times than God even I want to admit. But I have everything sort of in its spot and it feels good. And that's making me feel good. So regardless of how I'm feeling, just things are always feeling really good.
I love that. Whenever I organize a drawer or something, I almost get new life. It's so weird. So I agree, and that's why you and I are the same. Organization makes me feel so good. It's like an organism. Like an organization organism.
It's an organizational orgasm.
Right?
Oh, so good, Bryan.
Oh.
Makes you want to go,
in the kitchen in a clean drawer.
Yeah, it's like you put everything, you put all your Q-tips in a baggie and you just zip it up. You're done.
Well, I don't really want to know all the details about your organization then, but I'm glad you made it.
Yeah. We don't want, all the towels are washing. Don't worry.
Exactly. But my house is organized.
Still organizing. Organizing is so fun.
Oh my God. Well, actually, this kind of dovetails into the topic that I wanted to kind of talk about today, because I think in our lifetime, you and I have done an interesting thing around taking risk and just picking up and moving. And I kind of wanted to unpack that with you a little bit today around because there's a lot of people maybe listening or who want to move, who have thought about it. And you and I have just truly just always just done it. And that was almost our original organization. We were some can argue we were running from things, which we could talk about. But I think we were just you know what? We need a reset. And we would just pick up and go and start a new life. And I don't know. I want to talk about that a little bit. Because I think yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my therapist calls it running away. I call it just practicing more organizational skills. I love packing. You know what I mean? It's you're just not seeing it the right way. Oh, well, Mrs. Therapist. No, I'm just kidding. No, I do. We've moved multiple cities. You've moved internationally. Many things could be said. We did have that interesting upbringing where it felt like we had sort of had a sheltered life.
Mm.
But I think, I think there was a spirit growing up, uh, that maybe it was sort of a seed that was planted, and maybe not, maybe forgotten to be watered a little bit. But there was this idea that we could do anything and that we could go anywhere and that we could be anything. I think it was like a mixture between this like idea of the American dream, the proximity to sort of the generation that we came from, which was like our parents being immigrants, and that we were sort of the first American born generation to pick up that baton and run with it. So maybe a little, there was just this like, there was like this little spark, this flame and now maybe I'm just speaking for myself, that I always knew that I could just do big things, take big risks, make big moves. We don't have, or I don't have as big of our parents aren't leaving behind like massive amounts of money or trusts or anything like that. So,
Right.
Our security net, yeah, same, right? So our security net has to be established by ourselves. And I think that also has been a big driver in the levels of risks that we have both taken. I don't know. What's your take? Anything there that I said trigger or inspire your thoughts?
No, I think that's very true, right? We were never told we couldn't leave, right? And so I think having that spirit of like knowing that we could do anything, I think definitely helped. So I completely agree with that. I was reading this quote, and it's like the simplest quote, but this actually speaks more to me, and I don't know about you, but like I feel like when people stay in one place for a long time, it becomes their comfort. It's their comfort zone. Like it's easier just to stay somewhere that you just kind of are familiar with. But something I read was like your comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And I was like, that is so effing good, right? Like if you want to see growth in yourself, the best thing to do is put yourself in different situations and potentially even different places to explore different things and different people. And I feel like for me, like 'cause I grew up in Florida, I lived in LA, I lived in New York, I lived in London. Like I've been able to kind of, yes, they're all very big metropolitan cities, so one could argue it's all the same people, but it wasn't, right? You were introduced to all different cultures, and I don't know. So I kind of love that quote. What do you think?
I do really, really love that quote. And what I love about it and sort of what you said was this idea of that we were never told no.
Mm,
Uh, but if something wasn't working where we were trying to grow something, be it like, I don't know, like along our lifetimes, from small things to large things. I mean, we were sort of always encouraged to keep trying and to stay curious and
yeah,
to go out and but a thought also came to me while you were speaking around like where maybe this thought of like we can get out. I think that get out in quotations,
yeah,
to me was college. We were also the first generation who, since we were American born, we had the privilege to go through the American school system. And at the end, you are supposed to go to college, right? I think there was something there about like, go to any college, go be great, don't stay home. I think you started that comment off with, we were never told to stay. We were told to go. We were told to grow, right? Take those risks and go and go make ourselves better. But you know, something I said in another episode, which is something that I'm learning now in my older age, though, which I never thought would be the case is, you can go to all these places, but, you have to make sure to take care of yourself because it's always going to be you in all those places. I think the way that I phrased it in that one episode about during my interview was, wherever you go, there you are. And so, while we're taking all these great risks and seeing all these great places, some of it wasn't even a risk. I mean, maybe it was riskier than it, like for me, I'll speak for myself because like my
yeah.
move to San Francisco, for example, while it was risky, it still sort of had like a lot of fun wrapped around it. Like maybe that's what that risk was to me, was like going out and trying something new. Like I wasn't going to go back to school at that time. I just wanted to go out and work. It was a risk, but uh, that sort of comes to mind immediately based off of that quote that you shared.
I mean, there's something really beautiful about the chaos of starting over, though. Like yes, you're still you wherever you go, but sometimes it's a different version of you and usually the better version of you. And so I love that, like, picking up is not the easiest thing to do. It's definitely chaotic, but there's something beautiful in that, and starting over and feeling that perspective of like, I can kind of not like I can reinvent myself, right? Like no one knows me here. I can start a new friend circle. I can take some of the learnings that I did from my last previous location and kind of pivot and iterate and just be better. So I don't know, I think there's beauty in that chaos, and I kind of love that.
Yeah, from like sort of like a gay, what do you call that? Like a gay diva moment. Gina Davis,
Yeah.
right? Big Hollywood actress. She was notorious for saying, if you risk nothing, then you risk everything, right? Like, if you don't go, then you don't know. And that's another thing that I really love about this topic is it speaks so much to who we are as individuals.
Mm.
Um, Even this podcast, right? Like it's a risk.
Yep.
We've always been so daring to put ourselves out there at the cost of really nothing, right? Like the older I get, the more I learn that it's the people who aren't taking the risks who are sometimes the most unhappy
Yeah.
because they're literally wallowing sort of in their own minefield of what they think is wrong in their life instead of going out and find what could be right, right? So
Yeah. I've always told myself, and I've made myself this promise that I never want to be on my deathbed and ask myself, what if? Right? So I always want to embrace change. I actually really enjoy change, and I taught myself to love it because I don't want to have that feeling of like, what if I did it? To your point, you and I talked about a podcast, and then what if we didn't do it? I don't want to think that way. Let's just do it, you know? And so I think that embracing that change and like minimizing that what if statement in your head, it just leads you to a life where you're like, there's no regrets. Like, yeah, sure, some things are not going to go well, but at least you learned and you don't have to look back and say, well, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't do it. You did it, right? And you got
you do it.
from it. And I think that's beautiful. And I don't think people do that enough.
I think people take the idea of risk and fear and sort of things that sort of draw out that feeling of, oh my gosh, right?
Mm.
That like fills your sort of your core with
Yeah.
like, not good feelings. I think people like they take the thinking backwards. And I'll even put myself in that. And what I mean by that is like you think about like the end result, right? Instead of the opposite way around. And I love that you sort of just inspired me, Bryan, because this idea about embracing change and teaching yourself to love change. I'm sort of at the precipice of this right now.
You are.
Something that I've realized in my later in my life that, I have to be a little bit more agile, that controlling things is sort of like the antithesis to risk taking, right?
Mhm.
But what I really, really like about trying to reframe it, if you will, the idea of risk taking, where instead of like thinking about the end result, think about taking that first step,
Mm.
right? With every first step, with every turning of a new leaf, it like opens up a door a little wider. The world becomes a little brighter. Like it's the unknowing that people fear. It's not each little part of the process, which is so enjoyable. I mean, recently I've started joining all of these intramural sports here in the community just to get myself out of my house and to diversify my schedule and give myself a
Yeah.
little bit more activity. And you would think that that would just be second nature to somebody, but like it really took a lot of me to go and put myself out there. Now, was that really a risk? Not so much. But like, if you're talking about somebody who's like neurodivergent like myself, who sort of like internalizes and over processes, like
Yeah.
it starts to feel as if it could be risky because you're starting. Anyhow, all to say is, you don't know until you try. And why not? I don't want to be on my deathbed either, thinking like, there are going to be things in my life that I know I'm not going to be able to get around to. I would love to do everything, but I would hate for the excuse for me not getting around to those things was because I was scared
Mhm.
and not necessarily because I didn't. Right.
I mean, think about this is the best views come after the hardest climbs. And so like, it's so hard to get to the top, but once you're there, it's beautiful. Right. And those that don't make that trek will never get to see that moment. So
And if you're not climbing that mountain, you're seeing what everybody else is seeing. It's not until you put in the work, take those risks, get to the top,
yeah.
that view becomes extraordinary.
Yeah, like if you don't risk it all, you won't find it all. And so you truly need to like I'm not telling everyone that's listening to pick up and move tomorrow, but you just need to find those moments and those opportunities. And when it's time, go with your gut and don't question it, you know? Like,
I think it's that part, Brian.
you
It's
have
like we're
to.
not telling anybody to just pick up and move tomorrow. Definitely not just for the sake of it.
Right.
But what I will double down on is if there is something that you have been putting off to bring you more joy, to bring more health into your life, to start a new habit or a ritual or a routine that you really want to do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Try. Take one first stab. Again, I've been spending a lot of time here at the house organizing, like we were talking about, and I it was like so inundating to think about, like, oh my gosh, all of these things I need to get
Mhm.
done. And I'm like, one little step at a time. Like that's how we do these things. We eat one bite at a time to eat a complete meal. You read one page at a time to finish a book. Like, why can't we do that when we're talking about some of the bigger themes of our life? And whether that means moving or whether that means, you know, just advocating for yourself, for somebody that you like, or something that you need to say to somebody that in a very respectful way, that just to sort of get off your chest, whatever it is, right? Like you need to, you need to put the risk in the things that feel unusual so that you don't end up settling for what's ordinary.
Yes, so yes to all of it because I just will completely always double down on never live with what if. Because if you live with what if, you're going to live with regret. And to your point, even just the littlest things, and it could be so simple. Like, I need to go do laundry, then go do it. Just get it done. Be done with it. Don't put it off to the side. Because then you're going to be living with, well, what if I did it then? Maybe I'd have more time now. Like, remove the what if from your life. And if you do that, I don't know. I feel like it just opens you up to do more interesting things. Like, even as simple, to your point, as signing up for intramural sports, which to you is not like you're bringing your wall down. But if you had all this other chaos in your life that you had been putting off, that would have felt like more chaos, right? Versus something that you wanted to embrace. And so you want to remove that chaos, you want to remove the what ifs, and you want to just keep pushing forward. So I don't know. I still double down on if you risk it all, you find it all. And you just need to truly, like, I don't know, embrace the change. Because if you don't embrace the change, you're going to get stuck in the old. And it's not like a life that you're going to be able to evolve and grow in, I think.
Okay, so I have a few questions for you then. When, because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what if somebody's like listening to this and
Mhm.
what if they are thinking, what aspects of my life can I change?
Yeah.
For you personally, without saying, well, just do it and take out the what if, like, what have there been challenges in some of these risks that you've taken that you can sort of surmise across the board, right? Like find that red thread between a lot of the risks that you've taken. The question to you is this: what is the main underlying motivator besides the not wanting to have regrets on the deathbed, or, who do you do it all for?
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I think, simply put, it's for growth. Right?
Yeah.
Everything that I've done is to drive growth for myself. Whether it was because I wanted to do a career change or career progression. So I would move to London to really kind of do a whole new kind of position role to gain more experience. Or it was just truly personal growth. When I picked up and moved to LA to like start grad school, I knew absolutely no one. And for me, it was more around, I just need to find who I am as a person, because I was in that bubble of Florida my whole life. So I always have pivoted to make these changes in my life, the big ones and even the small ones, is truly just for growth. And I think
Yeah.
even if you're growing like even a centimeter here or miles there, you're still growing and you're making that progression. And I think that's what's always driven me is I just want to keep growing. And I find excitement in growing. And I find excitement on holding the mirror to myself and not only seeing the positives, but sometimes hating the negatives and really saying like, okay, I need to fix that. What are some examples? I could be a very stubborn person. I worked on that. Am I still stubborn? Sure, but I recognize it. And now I also realize how to tone it down. Do I like to be right all the time? Who doesn't? But I also realize when it's important to say I'm sorry. Right. And so you start to like with these moving around and find this growth. I've truly been able to like hold the mirror up to myself in a very interesting way. Um, and I kind of love that for myself because you and I know we're surrounded by some people in our lives that just refuse to change or grow. And I don't want to be that.
Yeah. That's a really good answer. I like that, coming from growth and the desire for growth. There was a moment when you were talking there about growth and staring at yourself in the mirror that I had some really awful images that I won't share with our viewers, but I knew I was following. I understood what
Yeah, you were there. You were there.
saying. No, I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that along the way, like when you were taking these risks, it wasn't so much that you knew what you were doing. You just so when you were taking these risks, it wasn't so much that you knew what you were actually doing as it pertains to the task or sort of the goal. It felt like you knew what you were doing in terms of wanting to continue to grow. And I think that's a really interesting distinction because a lot of times people don't take risks because they're scared of failing. And I think that that's another big blocker for a lot of people, myself included, is this idea of failure
Yeah.
and risk and not being on the other side of whatever risk that that is being taken. But from my own perspective, I'll say that the risks that I've taken in my life, picking up and leaving and moving from Chicago to San Francisco, and San Francisco back home, a lot of those risks have yielded some of the most beautiful pages of my story, especially the one coming from San Francisco. Had a great time out there, but the amount of growth I've done personally, I didn't know whether that was the right move to make, but it was the right move for me at that time. And now look at us go. I mean, we're closer to you, East Coast time. I love that. So there's just a lot of great things, and sort of I didn't know that I didn't calculate that these things would happen. But again, to your point, like the idea was to get somewhere where I could grow, and this time around, or this past time around, grow and heal at the same time. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, your example from San Francisco back to Florida is obviously a really powerful one because it just changed you completely as a person for the better. But if you even think about like any of these moves, think about the connections that you made and the people that you wouldn't have met if you didn't make those shifts in your life. I was in London a few weeks back, and there were some people that I got the biggest, tightest hugs from because I did create true connections there, right? And I wouldn't have had those moments if I didn't do that. And so some of the closest people to me I met leaving my bubble, right? And so there's so many other connections out there that you could be making if you make these shifts in your life. So I don't know. I feel like there's probably 5 or 6 people on your list that you were like, I wouldn't even know these people if I didn't make that move. And that kind of scares me, right? Because I don't know what life would be without those people in my life. And so I think that's also a big thing around these is personal growth, but also just there's so many fucking amazing people out there. And if you don't leave your bubble, you're never going to meet them.
And it's the most amazing people who are taking the risks,
Yeah.
right? Like, look at them. And I think some of the envy, if we want to be honest, it's kind of what it is. I wish I was ... Like, some of that envy is like basically the answer to the call of why am I so scared and what am I so scared of? If they can do it, I can do it, and put any sort of other, phrase or, stereotype there, because, they don't know what they're doing either. Like, the people who are taking the greatest risks are the ones taking risks.
It's true.
Period.
And you find connection with those same people who are like-minded. And so I don't know. I think there's so much beauty in that. And I think there's just so much beauty, overall in just taking risk, especially in moving, because the comfort zone can be very scary. I've even said, like, even just in my career, if I ever get too comfortable, I need to find a new job. I don't want to be comfortable. Why should I be comfortable? I'm 40. I have so much more road ahead of me. If you're uncomfortable, it forces you to learn.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't like being comfortable. That's just my mantra personally.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because the last thing I'll say about this, from my perspective, is that comfortability has always sort of like been the same to me as security. And I like the feeling of security.
Yeah.
So I didn't always like taking risks for that reason. And as I've gotten older, I realized that they're necessary. They are necessary. You will stay stagnant.
Yes.
In my opinion, that a life of no risks is a life of nothing at all, right? Because you need to, whether that means going after the person that you love, or building that dream house, or going after that job, or starting that new career, starting school at a different time of your life. Like, these are the risks that are going to reap the most rewards. And, you've been an inspiration to me too, Bryan. I have to say, I know that you've known this, but, a lot of the risks that you've taken have really allowed me to see that I've got some of that within myself too.
Yeah.
So thank
I
you
love
for
that.
being a big, yeah,
Listen, we are here to inspire each other and take
I
risks
love
together. And I don't know. I hope this was helpful to anyone that's listening. And yeah, let me know. Let us know. Comment below. I think, like I said, the best views come from the hardest climbs. So everyone keep climbing, keep pushing through. And anything that feels hard right now will be a win later. So that's all I have to say about that.
I'm going to go take a risk right now and be a 40-year-old at the gym. I'll see y'all later. Don't break a hip.
No promises. Bye, everyone.
Bye.